All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Greg, good afternoon. How you doing?
I am doing quite well. Yes, I bet people think I'm taking 2 weeks of vacation out of 3 here, but actually been a pretty heavy work week for vacation, if you want to call it that.
I can only imagine your inbox as you came back from sailing the 7 seas.
Yeah, it took me all of last week to catch up, right? So yeah, it's been crazy. There's a lot going on, of course, and that's always a good thing.
That is right. Well, today's show, we've got an outstanding show teed up. We have a couple of friends, big friends of the show, joining us to talk about the automotive industry and to talk about Hispanic Heritage Month and a few events that in both of those areas.
Yeah.
So, Greg, we're going to be welcoming in Jim Liegghio with the Automotive Industry Action Group here in a few minutes, and Elba Pareja-Gallagher with ShowMe50. You excited?
Right. I am excited for both of those occurrences. First of all, we hold AIAG in huge esteem in our experience, and I think probably everyone's, the first company to pivot from a physical to a virtual event, and man, did they do it well back when you could say pivot without everyone rolling their eyes. Even.
You are right. Well, they did not only did they do it well, but they made it extremely inexpensive for folks to pick up best practices and network and reconnect with the industry. And that's what we, beyond all the content, great thought leadership they have, those gestures are so welcome in this challenging year that 2020 is. So we're big fans. Looking forward to having Jim on. Hey, let's say hello to a few folks before we offer a few programming notes. Michael Avra says, "Hey, are we ready for the fish fry today?" Michael, I am ready for this fish fry. We've got all the bobblehead dolls. We got our shirt on. We had to make sure we're doing all the right things to maximize our luck, Greg. So Michael. Michael, of course, is referring to the Braves and the Marlins, which are squaring off in Game 3 of the NLDS at 2 p.m. So, Michael, great to have you. Hey, Syed is back here with us from Pakistan.
Hey.
Syed, hope this finds you well. John Baglino, who saved it. Great job Monday. He had some fast fingers, found a link as we were featuring Laura Cesari, which is home run stuff. And John saved us here. Great to have you and the Optessa team in the house. Sylvia Judy from Charleston is with us. Greg, what do you think Sylvia's up to this morning?
I imagine that she's making jam. Now, I don't know. She's probably making jam and changing the supply chain world at the same time. That's my guess. And it's funny because we were just talking with Jim about the last time we were in Charleston.
That's right.
Right. So, oh my gosh, we got to get back there. Get some jam.
Soon, very soon. Sylvia, great to have you here with us. Edward Murphy is with us. Keith Duckworth is here from the state that is home to the mighty Mac, he says, the Mackinac Bridge in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Larry Klein is here with us from Albany, Georgia. I think I said that right, Larry. It always trips me up.
It depends on if you're from there or from around there, because it's Albany for some people.
Right? Yes, that's right.
Albany, but Albany as well, yeah.
Ajit, Pratik, Todd, welcome everybody. I do want to give folks a heads up. Tom Rafferty is here with us. He is a great fellow podcaster, but more than that, he's a thought leader, especially in sustainability. And we're looking forward to having him join us for a future live stream to talk more about that and offer some of his insights and thoughts. So great to have you here with us today, Tom. All right.
Can I give a quick shout out to Todd Raines, who is in mourning along with me because of the passing of Eddie Van Halen, I think. So Todd and I were college roommates, and he is a supply chain pro too, purely by chance.
Really?
Yeah. He is big in pricing optimization. So anyway, it's been a rough couple of days. No comparison to all the big issues in the world, but when you think about it, people from your age starting to get to that age where they start to pass, and especially somebody as impactful as Eddie Van Halen. Todd's a guitar player. So anyway, yeah, I'm repping Van Halen today.
Well, kidding aside, 2020 has been a rough year on so many fronts.
Amen.
Gosh, we have lost some incredible artists in that regard. So, all right. So let's talk. Let's get Jim in here in a second. Two quick programming notes. First off, today, if you like today's live stream, be sure to check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. Today, we published the replay of Monday's Buzz, which featured Laura Cesari. Incredible stuff, Greg. So check that out and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. And secondly, mark your calendar. You know, we get a lot of feedback. Sometimes folks are getting notifications when we go live. Sometimes they're not. We go live twice a week right now, soon to be 3 times, Mondays and Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern time. And we want y'all to mark your calendars, because the best thing about these live streams is not us or our guests or what we talk about. It's what y'all bring to the table. So mark your calendar. We'd love to have you join us as often as you can. Okay. So, Greg, with no further ado, we've got a rock and roll show here today. Let's bring in Jim Liegghio, Program Manager for Supply Chain Products and Services with the Automotive Industry Action Group.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Jim, or good afternoon, Jim. How you doing?
Good afternoon, fellas. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Welcome
Great to
aboard.
reconnect with you.
I feel a little bit overdressed, I will admit, but I was happy to put gel in my hair for about the second time since March. So there's that.
Styling today. I love it.
Oh, yeah, I do love
Good
that.
to see you guys.
Yeah.
You too. You know, we were talking about, you know, when we first collaborated 13 months ago in Charleston with you and AIAG and the great organization. And we want to really have our audience get a chance to connect, learn more about you and the organization. Right, Greg?
Yeah. I mean, let's tell them a little bit about you. I know a little bit about your recent events, but tell them a little bit about, you know, kind of how you came up and how you landed at AIG.
Yeah, no, thanks, guys. Thanks again for having me and us on today. We're excited to do this. Myself, I have about 20 years of supply chain experience, actually. Hard to believe it's gone so fast. Time flies when you're having fun. So I've been lucky enough to have a variety of roles in supply chain over the past 20 years, both on the plant shop floor, in transportation management, in purchasing, trade compliance, and a few other things, even delving a bit into commercial compliance. So that kind of meandering path led me to AIAG about 3.5 years ago, where I work as a program manager in supply chain. So kind of jack of all trades, master of some is how I describe my role at AIAG. I dabble in a lot of the inbound materials and parts and materials programs that we manage, but I also deal in export compliance, our USMCA working group, events and training. So I kind of have a hand in a lot of different things internal to the company. So 3.5 years at AIAG, which is a not-for-profit automotive association. We're at about 3,100 members right now. We hover between 31 and 3,200 lately. We started in the early 80s, really kind of a culmination of the Detroit Big Three coming together, GM, Ford, and what was then Chrysler, now known as FCA, to try to solve common industry problems that are plaguing the industry, where it took a little bit more leverage than just one company. So think about things like EDI, standardized labeling for transport units or for packaging. Those types of things were kind of the impetus for what brought AIAG to be. So gone from 3 members originally to, like I said, 31, 3,200 today, which includes most of the OEMs, most of the global OEMs, most all of the large tier 1 suppliers, and then down into the sub tiers, service providers, compliance firms, et cetera. So AIAG's model still exists today, and that's kind of why we do what we do. We try to solve common industry issues, of course, now on a grander, more modern scale.
So real quick, Jim, you've got someone that maybe you rubbed elbows with previously, Lisa Hukanu Bishop, says it's a blast from the past from her Daimler Chrysler days.
Yes, it's a small world in supply chain. I run into, hi Lisa, thanks first of all for the shout out. It's a small world. We run into so many people we used to work with. Obviously, I started off at FCA. Well, now it's FCA. Back then it was Daimler Chrysler. So I started my automotive career 20 years ago at FCA. So it's fun. I do interact with a lot of the people I used to work with, because we are, one thing I failed to mention, we are volunteer driven. So we have about 700 industry volunteers that work on the projects and work on our work groups. There's only 47 or 48 employees at AIAG. So if you think about the volume of work we put out, the events we put on, and the training, 47 employees, including administrative. We can't do all that. So it's actually it's an industry collaborative group. It's for the industry by the industry. So it is fun to run into former colleagues like Lisa and some other folks.
Love it. Love it.
Yep.
Lisa, welcome to the programming. On that note, Greg, before we drive a little bit further with Jim, no pun intended, Tom says Tom's got a bone to pick with you, Greg.
Yeah, I saw that. So
we'll save that. We'll save that for our episode when we reconnect with Tom for sure.
Yeah.
Also,
let me just say, I can't claim to be an expert on all things British politics.
All right.
And I do acknowledge that it can be a little rough in Ireland and Scotland.
There you go. Larry says you're right, Greg, which I've heard. I hear that about every day. Greg's always
usually
right.
For me, though.
Yeah, that's right. And let's see. Aaron Freed and let's see, who was the other individual? Thomas Dent. They're talking Tesla in the comments. So Thomas and Aaron, we'll try to get to there once we get through our interview here with Jim, because we got some exciting resources we want to share with everybody here. So let's do just that. Let's keep driving there, Greg.
Yeah. So look, you've shared a little bit about some of your events and even this summit coming up, but we took part in the first one where you went, I'm not going to say that word again, where you went from a physical event to a virtual event. And I think a lot of people have used your model. You've probably actually heard from some folks who've asked for guidance since you were basically the first to go. But how have you applied that to this most recent summit? And what are you hoping that delivers to the industry and to supply chain generally?
Yeah. So the biggest benefit is, of course, the reach, right? When you have a virtual event, the sky's the limit. I think on our April Corporate Responsibility Summit, we had 20 some countries online. We had 31 states within the U.S. online. So normally, one of the inhibitors of our live events is people's travel budgets, right? So if we're doing them, whether we're doing them in Metro Detroit or we're down in Charleston, like where I met you fellas a year ago with the South Carolina Automotive Council, so travel is a cost and a concern. With the virtual platform, of course, we have the reach. Somehow our leadership had the foresight to really dive into this. Actually, almost before COVID was declared a pandemic, we were kind of looking at this. So it was great in that we got a contract locked in early. So the Supply Chain Summit will be our 8th live virtual event this year when it happens on November 5th. Actually, it's the last one of the year. I mentioned to you guys off camera, we have 3 other live virtual events between then and now. Our IMDS Corporate Responsibility event is next week. The 2-day Quality Summit, which is a huge event for us normally locally, it's one of our biggest of the year. That is the following week. And then we have the Customs Town Hall November 4th, which is kind of a staple supply chain event we do here locally, and then November 5th. So we've learned a lot. There's still a bit of a learning curve with putting on the virtual events and making sure the timing of things is worked out, and making sure that the features like the podcast that we're recording with you guys are set up correctly. So there's some technical learning curve to it, but we're seeing a good return on investment in terms of engagement. Our numbers, our registration numbers are good. We made the corporate responsibility event was free in April, so we had a huge wave of registrations for that. These latest events are very, very low cost. I think it's $29 for an AIAG member to attend either the Customs Town Hall or the Supply Chain Summit, and it's only $49 if you're a non-member to attend. Wow. The other thing we learned is that a condensed schedule seems to work better for the events. We do about a 3/4 day event running from about 8 a.m. until 2:15, 2:30. And then we leave the event open for virtual networking afterward. And if you missed part of the day or you have to jump in and out for whatever reason, the event's actually open for 60 days. You can come back in the platform, the environment, re-engage, watch the presentations for 60 days after the event. So, we're all pretty much working from home these days. Other obligations come up, or if you have to choose between 2 different breakouts, let's say, you can go back and actually catch up on what you missed, which is a huge benefit.
Well, and the keynotes can be rest assured, this is a fly-free event, right, Jim?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's guaranteed to show up on camera if their internet goes out. So
no flies. All right.
Well, so, look, Jim, we hold you in high esteem in AIAG, and we really enjoyed meeting you in Charleston and then participating in the Corporate Responsibility Summit. I have to say, as much esteem as we have for your organization, I'm stunned that you all turned out to be the leader, the sort of trailblazer in virtual events, and that you have, I know you don't feel like you have, but those learnings that you have presented there are more than I've heard enunciated by multi-billion-dollar technology companies. And your execution has been stellar compared to some of the other events that we've participated in. So look, congrats on that. I think that by nailing the event, it's a lot easier to put the focus on the content. People aren't worried about how they're getting it or whether they're getting it, right? So I think that execution that you all have done really is a model that people should follow. I hope you don't mind if.
No, that's actually refreshing and reassuring to hear. We actually really appreciate the feedback. We have received very positive attendee feedback and sponsor exhibitor feedback thus far. Actually, the exhibitors, they enjoy more traffic in the virtual platform than they would in the live event. So we do encourage people during the show, there's clickable messaging across the screen to go visit our exhibitors and sponsors, visit the podcast booth and check out those resources. I do want to give a shout out or credit to our team, our administrative team that puts on these events, because like you said, Greg, as a program manager, I refer to myself as the supply chain geek. I can focus on the content and the speakers. I'm not so much worried about the mechanics or the platform itself. That's being handled by program managers that handle that, and they do it quite well. So I focus on the content and the value that we bring to our industry and to our membership and our attendees that are not members. So just leading back to the agenda discussion, I do want to reiterate that we put a lot of heart and soul and brains into these agendas. Example being Supply Chain Summit was supposed to be a June in-person event. We pretty much had the agenda buttoned up by February, March as COVID came on. But we were able to kind of twist and pivot. Sorry, Greg, I'm going to throw the pivot word out there.
It's okay, man. It's hard not to, right?
We were able to adapt the agenda and make it more, of course, relevant to what's going on in supply chain as far as agility and pandemic response. My opening session actually has 3 OEMs talking about converting lines over to PPE, streamlining their import and export procedures and operations in response to the pandemic, kind of back in the early days of it. So it allowed us to really adapt the messaging and the value to the industry and what was really going on today. Something that we pride ourselves in year over year since I've been on board with AIAG, really the relevancy of our event agendas and the quality of our speakers. We really, if I have to say one thing directly to the audience, it's that we do put a lot of effort into those agendas.
So, and we try to make it easy, right? We're all about the one click here, and we've got the direct link to the Supply Chain Summit in November in the show notes. Y'all check that out. There's a ton of content for a very small price, which we really admire and love what the AIAG team is doing there. So, Jim, I think you've got one other event. I think you've got 4 events, I believe, in the next month and a half or so. Tell us about this customs event. And by the way, Sylvia, Judy, I know that customs is one of your expertise. Pay close attention to what Jim's got coming up. So, Jim, what you got?
Yeah. So as far as the customs town hall, actually, before I worked at AIAG, I was a volunteer that sat on a committee dealing with export compliance, one of the topics which is on the customs town hall. Other topics such as USMCA. We have top-level government speakers that come in. There's panels that include OEMs, service providers, and tier 1 manufacturers talking about USMCA. I've overseen a USMCA working group for about 2 years now that's finally put out a training product based on the new regulation. So trade and customs is one of the areas that we really pride ourselves on, we specialize in. And I often think of it as kind of not overlooked, but maybe underrated area of what we do, because it's so important in this global supply chain and making sure you're doing things right and following the right procedures, because believe me, your life can become very difficult if you're not, having had worked in trade compliance for a while. So the Customs Town Hall is actually a staple event for us year over year in November. 4 years ago, flashback to that, it was actually just after the election of Donald Trump. So we actually shifted our agenda to reflect some of the changes there. And we'll see what happens this year. It's actually the day after the election this year. So big week for AIAG, Election Day, Customs Town Hall, and then Supply Chain Summit. The agenda's online for that event. It's a very good event. I was talking to one of my co-chairs who works for Lear Corporation yesterday. He's a vice president at Lear, and we were trying to look at ways to kind of enhance some of the discussions around USMCA based on the working group and what they've learned over the last year and a half, 2 years. Very interactive. We have a lot of good Q&A that comes out of these sessions. like I said, top-notch speakers, and I consider it one of our most underrated events. I had worked on that event as a volunteer, so I think for at least the last 4 or 5 years now, the feedback from attendees has been just fantastic. So that's one of our favorite events here locally as well, because everybody in that community kind of knows each other. It's a very close-knit circle of international trade here in Metro Detroit. So it'll be interesting to see how the virtual environment plays into that, and if we can kind of extend that gospel into a wider audience.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
You know, we've had, Greg, as we both know and the audience knows, we've had Mexican diplomats and Canadian diplomats join us to talk about USMCA. It was also the subject before it even got passed by one of our speakers at that event in South Carolina, Jim, that we were at. And her prediction was right. It was just a matter of time. It was getting passed. But it really, you know, we need to have a whole show dedicated to USMCA because of just how much it's updated the trade between this special part of the world, right? These 3 countries that have a wonderful relationship and so much more opportunity. So look forward. It sounds like a great customs town hall, and we've already dropped the link into the comments to make it really easy for folks to sign up. All right. So Greg, as we start to wind down this segment, we need about 3 hours of Jim Liegghio, by the way.
We do. We do. And especially in this environment, but do we have the time? Because if we do, I'd love to just get some. Let's
plan to go for about another 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay, Jim,
sure.
Jim, you've got very limited time to answer this question. So obviously the other 5-letter thing, not USMCA, COVID, has been really disruptive to the automotive industry. I think it would be really valuable if you could share some kind of insights around automotive. You talked about the pivot to PPE and some of the other dynamics that they're seeing. What are you seeing now, or what do you expect to see in the near future?
Okay, so 2 things. That's a great question, Greg, and I'll do my best. There's 2 sessions on that at the Supply Chain Summit. The first one is kind of like I mentioned, talking about the conversion of production lines to PPE and streamlining operations around that. The second piece of it talks more about the restart, understanding preparedness, contingency planning, which we've long had assets and resources for that type of thing, kind of a pandemic response type program, which we did start to showcase in May and make free actually to members and non-members in a lot of cases. So the second session was actually kind of a culmination of a survey that we worked on with Wayne State University. They're a top 25 Gartner ranked program, local university. I'm an alum from there. Back when it was logistics management, not supply chain. Interesting times. But the second session talks a lot about that survey project and what some of the outcomes were, which included over 700 respondents in the industry, interviews with C-level executives talking about best practices and that sort of thing. One thing that I've heard recently in terms of preparing for our sessions at the summit is that the OEMs have a really good handle on their tier 1s, right? There's a good level of control there. There's a good level of transparency and understanding, releasing requirements versus what's available versus inventories. As you get down into the sub tiers, the tier 2 and tier 3, it gets a little bit murkier, right? You have a lot less control than you do over your tier 1 direct suppliers, unless it's like a directed sub tier sourcing situation. But it gets a little bit more convoluted and difficult to understand. And of course, maybe at the tier 1 level, there's some mediation of some of that noise, right? In terms of not wanting to upset the customer. So there's a bit of a lot of work going into it, and a bit of maybe even frustration in trying to understand kind of what's beneath the surface. So that's one thing that's really kind of emerged from all of this. But we're hoping our OEMs do a great job kind of showcasing their agility through all of this and showcasing some of their lessons learned. Disruption is no stranger to automotive. Production lines start and stop every day for a myriad of reasons, as you guys have probably, seen and heard from many guests. Something unforeseen, a relatively minor occurrence can shut down a production assembly line. But when you have something like this, it's on a global scale, it's unpredictable. How do you react to that? How do you gain transparency? And a lot of that goes onto the front end of risk management, contingency planning, understanding your network, where your suppliers are. We've had a global supplier heat map, which we call it, kind of understanding your network of suppliers, whether they're an AIAG member or not, based on about 75,000 manufacturing sites globally. So that heat map's been around as a member benefit for quite a while. maybe not foreseeing a situation such as this, but maybe foreseeing like an earthquake or a tsunami type of event where you can go in and you can plug in a zip code or a city name and you can see what suppliers and manufacturing sites were impacted. And a lot of that comes from the IATF database, which registers manufacturing sites globally. So we pull from a couple different systems for that. But
wow,
we love a good heat
crazy
map,
world,
for sure, around here. Todd, we're not gonna have time to get to your point, but it is a great one. I want to go ahead and share it, and maybe we'll have to have Jim back. But he was talking about how production has transitioned in some cases from Mexico to Central America, and how that's impacted the industry. So, Todd, great suggestion. We'll try to. I'm sure that will be some of the discussion at the upcoming Supply Chain Summit. And we want to make sure that folks know how to connect, Jim, with you and AIAG, that we might have some interest in membership or involvement in future events. So what's the easiest way to get in touch with you? Yeah.
So my LinkedIn is James Liegghio. I think you guys have a link to it already set up there. AIAG.org is our very, very user-friendly website where we're very transparent with our member benefits, our divisions of quality, supply chain, corporate responsibility. There's a training section for our training catalog and our products, which are publications. And then there's a whole section on events, supply chain home. And one of the newest things we put out there was a USMCA, what we call a landing page. So if you navigate through the supply chain menus, you can find the USMCA landing page, where it will provide you with links to resources, a link to our training class, some of the OEM endorsements of our work group, that type of thing. So our website, AIAG.org, is very, very easy to navigate, user-friendly. I mentioned the free tools for the pandemic response and some of that. There's a blue banner right on the homepage that if you click on that, it will take you to another landing page where you'll be able to find a lot of that, those resources, which we have made available for free to the public through the end of 2020.
Love that, man. I love that give forward mentality that's part of the culture at AIAG. Let's share a couple of quick comments. We want to welcome Kevin Bell, who I missed earlier. Kevin, Greg, Kevin is one of our experts in global supply chain. Great to have you here. Josue is here. Josue is in the trucking industry. He was on a live stream a few weeks back. Great to have you, Josue. And Steve shares that Tier 2 support is booming for automotive right now. Distribution channels are providing more flexibility and support to OEMs during these uncertain times than most ever expected. That is great to know. And then Larry may be in automotive. He says COVID slowed us down, but we were able to leverage some items out of our automation toolbox to keep moving during the quarantine.
Awesome. Yeah,
it is
fantastic.
All right. So, Jim, love what you do. Big fans of our partnership, continued partnership with AIAG. As we've started to interview some of the participants, we had some great conversations. We're looking forward to sharing that with our audience, including one of the leaders with DLT Labs, which is doing some really meaningful, bottom line, impactful work with blockchain in retail and other industries. Yep. Had a great interview with their chief strategy officer. So look for that as part of the event and as part of some of our post-event programming. But Jim, all the best to you and the AIAG team. We look forward to reconnecting just a few weeks away. And again, to our audience, y'all connect with Jim. He'd be a great addition to your network, and be sure to kick the tires on not only AIAG, but the 2020 Supply Chain Summit.
See what he did there?
Hey,
no,
Jim.
You guys have been, as per usual, you guys are amazing to deal with. I am a huge fan of your programming. AIAG is a huge fan of your partnership. And again, we encourage those looking for additional information to check us out. Thank you guys very much for having me today. It's always a pleasure. Look forward to talking with you soon.
One of our favorites, Jim Liegghio with AIAG. Jim, all the best to you.
Cheers. All right. Thanks, guys.
Buddy. All right, Greg, Jim is certainly one of our favorites, but for good reason.
Yeah.
It's great to see all the thought leadership out there, but the actions they're taking to connect individuals, professionals, practitioners, companies, suppliers with folks that, we all need access to that type of community. So love the good work AIAG is doing, right?
Well, I mean, we've said it a lot. Action is in their name, and that that's I think what we've always really appreciated about this organization is they are an action group. We've seen it firsthand from the Corporate Responsibility Summit and from Charleston when we were working with them. So yeah, I mean, they get stuff done. And automotive is a great model for supply chain effectiveness and efficiency. So many companies have those multiple tiers, and automotive has done a great job of managing to that.
Agreed.
In these times, sustainability and fair trade in the forefront of our minds, so we don't lose sight of that even during a crisis.
Yep. Well put. And you and I both know you better get it done in the automotive industry.
Darn skippy.
Or you're going to find out really quick. And Greg, I appreciate you calling attention to my kick the tires comment. I think that might have been lost on some, but hey, full of dad jokes.
Good one.
All right. So we're going to move from one of our favorite people in Jim Liegghio to one of our
verifiably.
That's right. Our top of the list with Elba Pareja-Gallagher, CEO and founder with ShowMe50. Hey, Elba, good afternoon.
How are you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing great.
Fantastic. And we got a little surprise for you. Now, we have limited time with you, but we cooked up a little bit of a surprise. As you know, you are the world record holder.
Oh, I get a belt.
Yeah.
Right. So to our audience, to make all this connect, Elba was on our first show. She's been a part of a lot of our programming. We're big fans of her thought leadership and her POV and what all that she brings to the table. And she is certifiably the number one record holder for appearances. And we've always talked about giving her a championship belt as part of that. So this is our digital version.
I love
Verified
it.
by data.
Thank you. That is cool.
All right. So Elba, welcome.
Actually, you know how on social media you can put badges next to your, profiles, right?
Sure.
You need to send me that image. I want the badge, man.
I feel like that could be a career changer for you, Elba. Not sure.
So, so much to talk about, so little time.
Yeah.
Elba, I think the couple of main things we want to talk about here today. First off, is Hispanic Heritage Month, which is it will be wrapping up over the next week or so. We'd love to start there. We've got some events we're going to pick your brain about a little bit, but let's start there. What does that mean to you, and give us some recent observations?
Wonderful. The first thing I want to say is that thank you for asking. I think one of the best things we can do to create more inclusive workplaces and make everybody really work hard for you is to get to know our people, right? No matter what, from what football team they follow to, what they do for fun. And where you come from is part of who you are. So just asking the question, hey, if you have somebody that kind of looks like they might be Hispanic or Latino, and I'm going to tell you the difference is, hey, are you? Tell me a little bit about it. Let me tell you what I know, right? I may have it all messed up, but so real quick, I think one of the things I always like to talk about is to help clarify confusion on the terminology. There are three main things we hear a lot about, right? Hispanic, Latino, and Latinx. Have you guys heard of the Latinx term lately?
Yeah. That's relatively new though, right? So.
It is relatively new. So it's kind of all confusing. So let's just kind of go through that real quick. And then if nothing else, you're going to know the three terms, right? And I'll tell you a trick because even I used to get confused. I had to go read about it. And I am Latino. So Hispanic, if you think of how you spell it and you can see the word Hispanic, you can see the word Spanish in it. And so Hispanic means you speak Spanish. Right now, there are different people all around the world that speak Spanish, not just in Latin America, right? Because if you go to what country in Europe speaks Spanish when you think of the word Spanish?
Let's think about that.
Spain. and by the way,
indiscernible for those of us in the Western Hemisphere.
That's right. And by the way, Elba, Tom says hello from Sevilla, Spain.
Oh, awesome.
Hola.
I haven't been to Spain yet. I still want to go there. But my father, who's from Colombia, has a big dispute with the Spaniards because he just feels like they stole all the gold. So he's like never going to Spain. So there's a little tidbit for you. So anyway, Hispanic speaks Spanish, right? Latino, right? You can kind of see the word Latin America in there. And so a person who's from Latin America is Latino. And then you add the gender to it because the Spanish language words are gendered, meaning if it's a male or a female term, a male ends in an O, Latino, and a female ends Latina. So I'm a Latina. So that kind of gives you a sense of Hispanic and Latino. So let's do a quick quiz. Scott, not to put you on the spot.
Oh boy.
So Latino, what does that tell you?
Latino would be male or man, right?
Yes. And what about kind of like geographic or language? People who are Latino come from where?
I would, if I had just a guess here, Central South America, perhaps.
Yes, Latin America. All right, Greg, what about Hispanic? There's only one left.
Speaking Spanish, people who speak Spanish, right? So, so just out of curiosity, we have Latin countries in North America, Central and South America. So does Mexico count as Latin America? So
technically, Central America is in South America,
right?
Latin America. So it gets a little dicey, right? So what I always say is, ask the person, hey, do you consider yourself Latino? Right? Because it's all about how do people identify, which brings me to the next term, Latinx, right? So since I said the Spanish language is gendered, these days, people may not want to go say they're one way or another, right?
Right.
A gender, right? And so if someone identifies differently, well, then what do they call themselves? They're not Latino or Latina. So that's where the word Latinx derived. So it's Latin with an X, meaning, hey, non-binary, right? And so it's meant to include all people that want to identify as Latino or Latina.
That's good. That is a very powerful learning for me. I hadn't heard that term yet, and I appreciate you bringing that to the table and informing us. Or things we need to know. We need to, and I also like about kind of what you're sharing there on the front end as you were prefacing your comments. Engage in learning what this means to different individuals. Right? There's not as we all know, there's not one definition for hardly anything these days, and it's all about what their point of view is. And that's a certain degree of empathy that we can all embrace probably in bigger amounts and here in 2020, right?
That's right. Exactly.
All right. So
let's see. I was going to see if I could tell you anything else. Oh, one last tip that I would tell you is, there's October 15th is the last day. So in terms of, what could you do to further embrace your knowledge and expand your group is go out and look for a recipe and cook something that comes from a country that's, Spain or Latin America, right? And you could do something fun with your families and you could talk about, hey, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. Let's cook, whatever. So that's my tip.
Love it. Who doesn't like cooking?
Yes.
A lot of times it involves good food and wine, perhaps, if you're in our household, and exploring new parts of the palate. So love that, Elba. Let's talk about, unless anything else you want to share.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. I'm good. Thanks for asking and spread the information.
And that's what we're all about here. And Greg, we've got a really, as you know, Greg, we've been building out our programming related to stand up and sound off. And that comes from a place where we're tackling some of the subject matter that isn't as consumable, I'll say. A lot of folks don't want to lean into some of these conversations. And hey, different strokes, different folks. We view it as part of our mission to help facilitate some of these discussions.
Well, look,
and Greg,
our goal is to give voice to those who need voice, right? And things like equality and culture and gender and whatever, all of those things need voice. And look, the truth is we solve these issues. We neutralize these words. We elevate these discussions when we have them. It's as simple as that, right? That's what we want to do.
Agreed.
And the supply chain is full of people who are different in all parts of the supply chain, right?
No doubt.
If we can inspire and motivate and get them to work really hard for us, the supply chain will be a well-oiled machine, right? So
I love that. I love that sentiment. Hold that thought for 1 second, because Jenny says she prefers eating over cooking. So Jenny, there's lots of kindred spirits here, especially eating good food. Jenny, by the way, is with SAPIX. She's part of their leadership team doing some special things in supply chain in Africa. So great to have you here as always, Jenny. Okay, so Elba, I loved your comment there. You talked about how, supply chain, much like, the automotive industry is a great example because it's going to cut through it's all about getting the job done while, of course, respecting cultures and geographies and different customs. And that's one of the beautiful elements about being in global supply chain. Right, Elba?
Yes. Yep.
So let's talk about the event coming up October 28th, I believe. And I'll find a graphic here momentarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about what folks are going to hear and why they should come out and join us for this special stand up and sound off event.
Yep. Awesome. I'm super excited. I'm going to be sharing the virtual stage with my friend Anya Caruso, who works for Plexus, which is a big brokerage. She's specifically a VP in risk management, and she works with, people across the supply chain trying to mitigate risk. So the gentleman who was just on, was it Jim?
Jim Liegghio, yeah.
Yeah. Did he say he's AIG?
AIAG. Not the insurance company.
Okay, got it.
An automotive association.
Okay, got it. Well, Anya is insurance. So mitigating risk and the supply chain sure needs that, right? We all do. And of course, I work for UPS. So my day job, I'm working on year 24. Know plenty about supply chain and the evolution of the supply chain and across a variety of industries, including automotive, healthcare, you name it, small businesses, e-commerce. So what we're going to be talking about is what are the success stories? What are the tactical things that are working inside corporate America to get to more equitable workplaces, right? Where everyone's included, where economic benefits are shared by all. We all have an equal chance to grow upward the economic mobility chain, et cetera. And so it's going to be very practical because I know Scott and Greg, you guys know I'm very action oriented, right? At UPS, we call ourselves problem solvers, and that is just in my blood. And so it's not just about complaining, well, why aren't there more women in leadership? It's like, okay, here's the list of 23 things we can do to get more women in leadership and make it a better playing field for all employees. But in this event, we are specifically going to be talking about racial justice and equity and what we're seeing in our companies and the companies we interact with that's working. And in fact, just today, I was looking at the vast list of things UPS has done, and it is absolutely impressive. And I made the comment that there is no doubt in my mind that we have got to be in the top 1% of what is being done in companies out there. And so I want to share some of the things that we're doing. I want to share with Anya some of the things that we're seeing.
And equally as important, we're going to hear from the audience about some of their observations, some of their, whether it's things that they're seeing that speaks to the actions that are being taken, the heavy lifting that we all know we must take to make, to provide justice to all and opportunities to all. Or secondly, some of the parts of the problem that in their neck of the world that they're seeing. So really, that's what this whole series is built on. It's very, it's even more interactive than our live streams because we really try to provide an equal opportunity for both the panelists and our audience to weigh in. So Elba, if you recall last time, well, actually the last panel we had was in early July. We had folks calling in and sharing some of their comments there. And however we can make it easy, Greg, to make that conversation happen, that's our charge, right?
Well, I think if we have people in the audience who aren't seeing what needs to be done, you'd be hard pressed to have a better panel than Elba and Anya to be able to say, if this is the difficulty you're facing, this is a possible approach to overcome that, right?
Yep. Elba, I'm going to share something with you that I bet you don't know about Greg.
Okay.
He's got roots, and I'm not sure how many generations that go back, Greg, but he traces his roots to Argentina.
Oh, wow.
And I think there's a picture of a, Greg, I'll take it away.
That's our rancho in Tandil, Argentina, in southern Buenos Aires province. So also, this is just by coincidence. This is the piece of Ellis Island from my great-grandfather. When
awesome.
He came to America from Argentina. October 13th, Elba. October 13th of 1914, he came to America.
Wow. That is cool. That's so neat. That's neat that you have that plaque back there too.
Agreed. All right. So Elba, let's, again, we're going to make it really easy for folks. That's what we like to do here. So stand up, sound off with Elba and Anya, October 28th, 12 p.m. You do need to register for this one. This will not be a live stream. This is going to be using a webinar platform. So that really helps us incorporate your voice, the audience voice, as easy as possible. So register. We've got the link in the show notes. I think we've got the link to Elba's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. So connect with her. I promise you won't ever regret it. It'll be a great, valuable addition to your network. And Elba, anything else as we wrap up here? Sure. ShowMe50.org. Give us a quick blurb on that and how folks can get plugged in.
A couple of things, but one last thing, kind of in the style of the debate last night, right? One more thing on that other point. So
I thought you were going to have a fly.
Oh my God. No, I haven't watched the news, so I didn't see it, but I saw it live last night. I had to go to my TV, right, and go, is that my TV? Or is that his hair? Anyway, lots of Q&A on that stand-up event because, Anya and I want to talk to people, it's not going to be one way. We want a low present initial remarks and lots of questions, of questions and answers. That's what we want. Okay, so last remaining few minutes, I do want to mention a couple of things. We got a couple of things at ShowMe50. So if it's not clear by the sign behind me, closing the gender gap, one corporation at a time, we certainly want to see 50% women in senior leadership positions. And we're taking actions and giving advice on how companies can improve their talent management practices to make it happen. And again, be inclusive for all employees. When we have a transparent talent management system, everyone, including white men, can compete on a level playing field, right? Because there's so much politics in corporate America. Yep. So we've got a couple of events coming up on October 27th, the day before your event. It's a 45-minute power lunch. And if you just go to ShowMe50.org, it's free. And what we're going to do in the 45 minutes is cover the Lean In and McKinsey Women in the Workplace study. And so unfortunately, what it's telling us is that we are losing ground and at great risk because of COVID to erase the gains that women have seen in the past 5 years. So we got to step it up as companies to get ahead of that. So that's the first event. So the 27th, go to the ShowMe50.org website. And I also want to mention that ShowMe50 is working with CoreNet Global. CoreNet Global is the professional association for the real estate, corporate real estate industry. So these are companies who use their real estate for their own, buildings, facilities, running their operations. Right. And they have an equity certificate. So you can get a diversity and equity certificate program. It's like 8 courses and you take them over your lunch hour over the course of like 8 weeks and you get a certificate. So that information is out there as well.
Outstanding. And ShowMe50.org. It's just that easy to plug in to these resources that Elba is facilitating and leading. And Elba, really appreciate, we're big fans.
By the way, 501c3.
That's so good by the way,
so give money.
Give money, but guess what? It's so easy because guess what's coming up? You guys are in supply chain, e-commerce, Amazon, big Prime event, right?
Yeah,
so
Prime Day, right?
That's right. Prime Day is October 13th and 14th. So again, if you go to the ShowMe50.org donation page, you can click on a link and associate your Amazon Smile account with us, and we get a tiny little fraction, and we sure would appreciate it.
Love it. All right. It's just that easy. Elba, always a pleasure. Looking forward to a couple events you've already shared. Always appreciate your focus on action. It's all about deeds, not words. It's built in our DNA here. We share that. We're kindred spirits. And always a pleasure to reconnect with you. Looking forward to October 28th, though, in particular.
That's right. Okay, this was a great way to spend my lunch break. So thanks, guys.
You always spend your lunch with us. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot of things,
Yeah.
Thanks so much to Elba Pareja-Gallagher, CEO and founder at ShowMe50. Thanks, Elba.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Elba.
All right. Always refreshing to reconnect with Elba. I was holding this back.
The energy, man.
Yes.
Unbelievable, right?
Yes. And she was tackling some stuff we need to hear. I don't want to inject too much humor, but Nikote says that Fly from last night has his own Twitter handle, by the way. So, of course, no surprise. Anything that happens in society today, there's going to be 10 new Twitter profiles coined, right? Josue weighs in here. So Josue says, I personally think it should not be 50-50. There should be more women in leadership positions, and men ought to get to work more, where physicality and intuition is more necessary in conjunction. That's interesting commentary. I need to chew on that a little bit, but Josue, regardless, thank you for sharing.
Look, the fact is it's inevitable. It is inevitable. There already are, gosh, I wish we could have asked her this. There already are at least as many women in the workplace, and there will soon be more because the birth rates of males are going down. So, so there will be more, but it's not proportionate to the population in the workforce today. And if we can get anywhere near that point, then birth rates will take over from that point and help us.
The other element, Greg, especially is representation in the upper highest echelon.
Yeah, especially that. That's right. I mean, that's way disproportionate, and that's the study that she was talking about as well. Is that it started going the right direction, and I think in 2019 it kind of plateaued. And this year, of course, as people have not focused on that, it has backed up a little bit. It sounds like.
Agreed. Yep. Got a lot more work to do. Okay, so we're going to close on some upcoming announcements and resources. Thanks to everybody that has tuned in with us here today. I love wings and beer. Davin's talking about getting together, breaking bread, wings and beer. That does bring a lot of people together for sure. All right, so Greg, let's see. We talked about this last Monday. Corinne and I did. So we had Alexis Bateman reach out to us. She is part of the MIT Sustainable Supply Chain team, doing good things there. She's leading a project called the State of Supply Chain Sustainability. It's a bunch of S's. Gosh, MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics and CSCMP. Those are the main drivers behind this report.
Yep.
And by the way, Alexis is going to be joining us on a live stream to talk sustainability, probably with Tom Rafter. We're still working on that. But they're gathering feedback from supply chain professionals everywhere. And that's where I know we can count on our audience to click on that link and submit their insights when it comes to what they're experiencing or some of their thoughts around one of the biggest topics of our time. And so check that out. State of Supply Chain Sustainability 2021. We've got the link in the show notes, and we'd love to get your input as part of that study. Greg.
Yeah, so MIT is, and it hurts me to say it because we're in Atlanta where Georgia Tech is, it is the premier supply chain educational institution on the planet. So if you want to hear about what the foundation is for sustainability, this is a great set of authorities here. So listen up. Listen up.
Love that. We gotta get some t-shirts made, right?
We do.
With your phraseology, your mantra.
You probably just started a flood of comments by even mentioning Supply Chain Now swag.
Yes, right. Supply Chain Now swag. It's coming, folks. It's coming. All right. What's also coming is a lot more new programming reflecting a wide variety of content here at Supply Chain Now. Amongst that, Greg, is the new Tech Talk Digital Supply Chain podcast with the one and only Corinne Bursa.
Yeah.
And this is kind of if you're a comic book fan or superhero fan, we kind of use this origin story with this first episode. Kind of, meet Corinne, meet her background, meet her MO for even wanting to do this Tech Talk series. And I was part of it, had a blast. I'm partial. I've known Corinne for a long time. It's a pleasure to figure out the latest and greatest way to collaborate with her. But Greg, she's got some serious chops and experiences when it comes to all things digital, right?
Digital, supply chain. I mean, look, Corinne has been one of the premier supply chain professionals. She is the, what is the title that they give? The supply chain professional of the year for the year, right? Pros to know. She is the pro to know for 2020. So many of us are pros to know. Right. That's an honor to be identified as that. But she is number one. and for good reason. And you will find that out in this episode.
Yep. So tune in for that. The first episode's already been published. Podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. I think went in the main channel for us as well. Subscribe to that new series, Tech Talk. I promise you will not be let down. Hey, David, he says, how do you not have a digital store? I want a supply chain now coffee mug.
The cobbler's children have no shoes, right?
Yes. But Greg, hey, we're going to take this as a challenge, because you know what? In this day and age, why don't we just have a third-party fulfillment company? We pick a few things out that they can host, and folks can get it on demand. So, David,
sure,
I'm going to take that as a challenge, and we're going to figure that out. So it's coming.
So let's do a survey. Should we open it on Shopify or Amazon? Let's see what everybody thinks.
That is right. Hey, speaking of new content, we're really excited where Tequila Sunrise has gone. I think I've lost count because all of the great buzz around this series. Greg, tell us about the latest.
Doing Tequila Sunrise. That's episode 16 that you're talking about right there. So.
Well, as podcasters, you and I both know those episode numbers are near and dear to our hearts for some reason. But tell us about our great friend, Sarah Barnes Humphrey. We featured part 2 of your great interview with her, dropped today. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of our community knows her from Let's Talk Supply Chain, but she is one of the top women entrepreneurs in supply chain. She has her own tech company called Ships. And we talk a lot about, it's a 2-part episode, as you said, Scott. So we talk a lot about her upbringing and her ascension to founder and CEO-hood in tech. And it's a great story, and it's not all smooth and a bed of roses. I mean, she went through some tough times with a family business. I think if any of us, Josue, if any of us have experienced a family business, you know what that can be like. She was, and this is quoting her, out on her ass at one point and had to kind of pick herself up by her bootstraps and recognize this vision of this solution, Ships, that she saw as a need in the marketplace from having done it. The value of her vision and her applying her experience, but also with this sense of naivete, this willingness to look at the market, a market she knew very well in a new way, has really created a valuable solution, and companies are flocking to it. So it not just the company, but also Sarah. And there's a ton of takeaways, whether you are a founder or entrepreneur or investor or just a professional. There's a ton of takeaways from that discussion. Oh yeah. Thank you, David. She's also Canadian. So yes.
Good
and
stuff.
Proudly so, let me tell you. And she says, David, she says, "Oat," just like you would be proud to hear her say.
Josue wants a mug too. We're working on it, my friend. We're working on it. And Jenny, great thoughts from there, as always, from you. We appreciate our collaboration. And I got your email, by the way. We're working on that November calendar. I'll be back in touch real soon. Okay. Great episode. Y'all check out Tequila Sunrise. It definitely, as we build out a variety of programming, we really, we may not have something for everybody, but we really want to offer a wide variety of points of view. And that was the whole thing. I mean, y'all know Greg, you've got an appreciation of his background through all these shows here. It is very, very unique, and we don't talk about it enough. And this series allows him to really showcase his expertise and others that are supply chain tech or founders or entrepreneurial or for folks on the move. And that certainly all that applies to Sarah and the Ships team. So good stuff there. Yeah. All right. Big event. Greg, last Monday, I was very careful because we were featuring such a heavyweight champion of the supply chain world in Laura Cesari. Mm-hmm. But we talked about lean. There's been a lot of debate around lean throughout the pandemic, right? And mistakes made or gaps or whatever. And there's lots of very well-educated opinions on all sides of that debate. And it's a debate we must have because it makes the industry better. So, if anything about lean appeals to you, and certainly anything about manufacturing, then you're not going to want to miss the AME Toronto 2020 event. So, Greg, AME, Association for Manufacturing Excellence.
Yeah.
Outstanding organization, has been around for quite some time. They went virtual here. They were supposed to be in Toronto and had to adjust as everyone else. And we're going to be facilitating this panel. And I bet, Greg, my hunch, my crystal ball tells me we might be talking about lean a little bit.
Well, I can guarantee it sitting from this chair right here. I think, look, it's inevitable when you talk about it for that to come up. Also, the same discussion we were having with Jim. What about sustainability? What about corporate responsibility? What about tier 2 and 3 suppliers and fair trade, right? And good human capital practices and things like that. I reckon that a good number of those things will come up, and we've got a great panel to discuss it. So I really appreciate the folks at AME inviting us to moderate that. I really applaud every one of you professionals who wore a suit and tie or appropriate attire for the photographs here. And but seriously, whether you are a fan of lean or whether you feel like it failed us somehow, this will be a great discussion. You're going to get the real scoop here.
I wish I was better with PowerPoint and marking this up, because Greg, one of these things is not like the others. But hey, that's that's part of the beauty. Going back to one of the greater themes here throughout this show here today is it takes a village. It takes a village of very different voices and very different walks of life. And that is one of my favorite things about what we're doing, to be able to sit down with people that have had so different experiences and share them here. So love that. An image worth 1,000 words, right? All right. So we've talked about this stand up and sound off. Y'all check that out. It's free to register. Please come, as you always do, ready to contribute and share and stand up and sound off. Or as Greg coined last week, what'd you say?
You don't necessarily have to stand up. You can do it sitting down, but you better sound off.
Right. But when we coined the name of that series, that stand up was less about the physical act, but more about drawing a line in the sand and standing up for what's right. In many ways, hey, don't want to be too dramatic, but that's been a big part of those conversations, and it's a big part of our mission here. So y'all check that out, October 28th. I promise you'll leave that 90 minutes and you'll be more informed. You'll have some of this blind spot that we all have, whether we like it or not. Some of that blind spot addressed and filled in through other people's perspectives. So check that out. And I think we've got one more announcement here, Greg, as we're going over for a few minutes here. SupplyChainNow.com. Radio is dead, at least to us. Now, we're kidding, of course. I love my sports talk radio, and I'll probably be listening to my Braves as we work this afternoon, starting about 2. But check all things supply chain out at supplychainnow.com, where it's all about giving voice to practitioners and professionals in an industry globally. That's our mission, and we love to have all the engagement like we've had this past hour, all the contributions. That's the best part about it, isn't it, Greg?
It is, and some surprising. I mean, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, but some surprising insights. So I knew Todd, for instance, was a supply chain expert. I had no idea he had so much knowledge about Tesla. I don't know if you saw the conversation that he and some of the other people were having around Tesla, but and it never ceases to amaze me, the insight and the capabilities that our audience have, our community. I prefer to call it a community, right? Don't you feel like you could live next door to these folks? I mean, you might no doubt. You might not even know it. So, but it does feel like it does feel like a community, like a neighborhood, like folks that you know, right?
Yep. So David is on fire. He says supply chain now. They need to be big ones, talking about the coffee cups.
Coffee cups.
No self-respecting supply chain professional drinks from a teacup.
So the ones I like, Scott, as long as we're here, those Z-Beans coffee cups that we got from them, that it looks like an old porcelain cup and it's massive. Love that thing.
Love it. Y'all check out Z Beans, doing some good things in the coffee industry. Okay, we're going to wrap up here. And folks, if you're a baseball fan, y'all pull for the Braves. This is my Chipper Jones bobblehead. I think I got it. I think I haven't unopened it, as you can tell, but I believe I got that at his last game, the year before he retired.
So what year was that?
Oh, gosh. Greg, holy cow. I think
what year did Chipper Jones retire?
Yeah, check that out. I'm not sure. It's probably been he's already in the Hall of Fame, right? So it's probably 11 years ago.
2012.
Oh, okay. 8 years.
Yeah.
All right. So, hey, I got to share this from Larry. Larry says this is such an amazing way for supply geeks to get together. Hey, Larry, we embrace our inner or maybe our outer supply chain geekdom here, and appreciate you stopping by and sharing your comments here. So everyone,
can I share a really quick recipe that's easy for anyone to make.
Okay.
In celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, steak. So steak is the traditional dish of Argentina. So all you have to do, folks, just hit the grill, cook a steak, make it really good meat, and cook it well. And you have done your part. I'm not kidding. You've done your part.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, to our audience, sounds like a new podcast, Cooking with Greg. To our audience, thanks so much. Really appreciate you not just tuning in, but sharing your perspective and what's important to you, and for that matter, and your sense of humor. We all have to engage. We all have to maintain a very healthy sense of humor based on what has transpired this year. And as always, Greg, our challenge is the same challenge we're going to pose to each of you. Do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. Be like Elba for sure. And we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Listen up.